Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode here of our Bhagavad Gita podcast series. Welcome, Michael. Lovely to see you.
Welcome, Jackie, and welcome to all our listeners, as usual. I'll just make a start straight away, Jackie, and
Yes,
get into it.
Let's launch in.
I just want to revise a little bit just at the ending of chapter 13 to lead me into the new chapter that we're going to be starting to today. So last week I emphasised at the completion of chapter 13 how Purusha, that is the spirit, the knower of the field, the reality, and Prakriti, the creation or the field or the illusion, were the two sides of the one coin, like heads and tails on a coin. Remember I was saying about the two sides. And I shared a little description of Sri Ramakrishna's, who said similarly, using the analogy of the ocean, saying, as the ocean is sometimes calm and placid, and other times wild and active, it remains the one ocean, wild and furious. So he's saying the ocean's like two sides of a coin. Sometimes it's calm and sometimes it's wild and furious. He says, when calm and actionless, the ocean, it's a description of Purusha, the reality. That's its nature, calm and placid. When it's wild and active, it's a reflection of Purusha in its active form, which is Prakriti, Mother Nature, or the creation. So as human beings, having a dual nature, we are like this ocean. We are, however, also just the one, capable of operating from our higher self, Purusha, calm and gentle, or we likewise can be operating from our lower self, our Prakriti, our mortal nature, which can be wild and furious. So everyone, I'm sure Jackie recognises that they've got those two aspects in the calmer side of them, which is your higher self, your divine aspect, your immortal self, and when we get off the straight and narrow, well then we can be wild and furious to certain degrees and in all sorts of circumstances, and in which case we're operating from our egoic, lower mortal nature. All right.
I probably should be more concerned. I just feel like bursting out laughing. I'm pleased. Perhaps my instinct is to giggle because it is kind of humorous in a way. Sometimes we catch ourselves out, don't we? I mean, I know I certainly do from time to time. I hear myself say something or respond, and you almost have a moment of like, what did I just do? Like you shake your head at yourself, like, where am I? What just came out? You sort of remind yourself that was a really lower place to come from, and pick yourself up and take a different perspective, respond in a more grown-up, mature, aligned with your higher values perspective.
Yeah, once again, you've sort of nailed it right from the get-go. That's exactly what we're going to be talking about in these next two podcasts, this one and the next one, of course, covering this chapter. It's all about these, they're called energies, Jackie, in listeners. Gunas, the Sanskrit word. I'll get onto that, so I won't repeat myself. But it's exactly what you're saying. And the exercise, again, for today will be to observe these sorts of changes that are operating in the line of the new words that I'll be introducing. All right, so, but again, it's spot on. And the fact that you and I'm sure many of the people listening can relate to that, how you say something or you do something, and then, or even if it's not instant, a day or two later, when there's repercussions start making it pretty obvious, you think, why the heck did I do that? Why did I say that? Or just sometimes it's by mistake. You're not thinking sort of too much and you just blurt something out, but the damage gets done. So this is the role of human beings existing and living on planet Earth, the planet of dualities, where we can explore anything, and we do, sometimes successfully, sometimes disastrously. So that's that reference to calm and placid or wild and furious. All right, Jackie, I'll continue on, but that helps lead into what I'm talking about today. So, Jackie and listeners, these four words that I mentioned at the end, calm and gentle, wild and furious, lead me nicely into part one of chapter 14, titled The Yoga of the Three Gunas. Now, I've recently made some brief references to the gunas in material that just briefly mentioned, and I said I'd be coming and getting to it in a later chapter where the whole chapter would be on it. So we finally got there, folk. They were just brief references in the context, and I didn't have time to elaborate, but in these two podcasts, I've got the time to elaborate, so we'll get a much deeper and clearer understanding of what they are and how they operate, and most importantly, that we're in charge and we can determine which of the three gunas that we're operating from, sort of like up and down on a record player or something like that, when it used to have the bar graphs and the lights used to show going up and down volume, or whatever it might be. So I'm saying here, so due to their importance, we'll be looking at them in great detail in this chapter. The word guna itself comes from the ancient language, Indian language, Sanskrit. We in English, we don't have an equivalent word for it. We'll understand what those three qualities are, but we don't have a word such as guna. So there'll be three Sanskrit words that I'll be using frequently in these two podcasts, Jacqui, and guna is one of them. So I'll elaborate now on what that word actually means. So the word guna itself comes, I've just mentioned that, sorry. Unfortunately, we don't have the equivalent word for it in English, but guna has two distinct meanings which we can describe in English. Firstly, it refers to the qualities. Gunas are qualities, of which there are three, and in descending order, and they are important, middle and lower, but all three operate in every human being. In descending order, they are known as Sattwa, Rajas, and Tamas. So I'll elaborate as I go. The second meaning of gunas also means, because many of the Sanskrit words can have two or three meanings. So one is qualities and another one is threads. And it's important that we understand that these are the two important meanings of gunas. Threads or strands or ropes or chains, which when woven together or become enmeshed, then bind or imprison or keep in a state of bondage in the individual. So you can recognise there, Jacqui and listeners, that that's why I'm stressing how threads are important, because these qualities, these moods, can bind us if we get entangled in them, like in a spider web or something like that. And your little example you just shared at the start is, touching on this sort of stuff. So Krishna now begins teaching Arjuna, who of course represents all of us, this fundamental new knowledge of the gunas. And it is fundamental, Jacqui and listeners, and it's very, very important, because most people, I'm sure, haven't realised or understood what it is that's behind everything they've thought, said and done in this lifetime, and everything that's going to be behind everything they say and do and think in the rest of their lifetime. And it's these three qualities, these three gunas, that are driving forces behind everything in a human being, as well as everything in the entire creation. So I can't stress enough to anyone listening that very, very important chapter. All the chapters, of course, are important, but this will be fairly new to, I would think, most people. And even the people who have heard or come across the reference gunas and know a little bit about them, I'm sure they'll get a deeper understanding as we go along, Jacqui. So I'll just finish that sentence, and then I'll let you make any comments if you've got any. I read a couple of lines, but there's four there to finish off this little segment, so I'll reread it. So Krishna now begins teaching Arjuna, who of course represents us, this fundamental new knowledge of the gunas, which represents the quality that binds all human beings through attachments and desires to anything in the creation, the world of Maya and illusion. So this is why we're in this world, Jacqui, why we're in the world of duality, and we can't escape until we understand what it is that's binding us and keeping us in bondage or in, in a state of enmeshment, like, as I say, an insect getting caught in a spider web and struggling to get out. Deep down, everyone knows we don't want to be here. We don't belong here. It's not our natural place. We're only here as human beings exploring planet Earth. And eventually, when we've done all the exploring we want to do, or feel we need to do, we'll eventually want to return back home. So just like when we go on long holidays, as good as they are, we like to get back home. Yeah. Well, in that sense, planet Earth is like a holiday resort. We're here for many, many visits, lifetimes, and but eventually we like to go back to where we belong. This isn't our rightful place, even though it can be very enjoyable and whatever. It's no crime or no sin. Just keep doing that. But eventually, like even holidays, you yearn to get back home, no matter how good they are. Well, I certainly do. Maybe I'm a bit crazy or something.
You
So,
are a little different on that front than most people. I suspect most people enjoy their holidays a little more so.
yeah.
But anyway, I digress. I digress with a family comment.
So have you got anything you'd like to add there? Like I'm only just started to introduce it, but
Yes, no, I think keep going. I mean,
yeah,
I've not heard. I always associate and have been taught about the gunas as energies and qualities. I've not actually heard the terminology threads.
yeah.
I know you're portraying it in a negative way, as in the binding part, but in a way, it's kind of nice because I think, as you're about to go on, I'm sure, and elaborate on the qualities of the gunas. When you're talking about the tamasic and the lower qualities, that can be hard for human beings to reflect and think, oh, I've got a yucky or a less um, a part that's not as well regarded within me. But to think of threads, for me, it's actually a nice sentiment. It's just like we're woven together of all of these strands, all of these qualities, some lower, some higher, some more active, some more peaceful. To me, it's like a bit of a harmonizing thought. I mean, while we are here on Earth and living this life, we may as well be enjoying it the best we can. So
Oh,
I'm quite
yeah. Well,
liking the notion of harmony within that concept. But
yes.
I
Yeah.
might just be latching onto that because it's appeasing me and appealing as a notion.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
curious to
Yes.
hear what else you've got to say.
Yeah. Well, I'll have plenty to say. I can
No
tell you,
doubt.
and it won't be quite as rosy as you're making out. But most of what you're saying is, not inaccurate or not truthful. In the end, one will come to understand, or need to come to understand, that and your analogy of the tapestry, and that is perfect. Like that's like my analogy of the spider web, but yours is more elaborate and nicer, and that's right, because in a spider web it's sort of like pretty yucky and you're desperate to get out. Every individual, Jacqui, on the planet has woven and is continuing to weave a tapestry called me and my life. It's like a production or making a film or a tapestry, whichever way you like to describe it, writing an autobiography and saying this is how my life's unfolded, telling your friends about this, happened 10 years ago and this was when I was 5 and all of that is all part of this tapestry that we weave. But that whole tapestry, when you cut to the chase, is an illusion. And one will want to leave that tapestry, no matter how nice it might be. So even the highest of the Gunas, Sattwa, binds people as well. And I'll elaborate on this over this week and next week. So I'll just have to let it unfold, Jacqui, and
Yes,
whatever.
yes, go with it.
But just other people, I'm sure, listening would have been thinking along exactly your lines, and my job's not to paint a pessimistic picture of everyone's lives, and we're all dodos and living here on planet Earth like dummies or something like that. In a sense, we are, but in another sense, we're also made in the image of God. We've got the highest self in there, and so we're capable of eventually of discriminating between what's real and what's not real. And the mayas, the gunas, are part of Maya, part of the creation, and the whole creation is not real. It's only real when we attach to it and believe it to be real. once we can see it in a different light, then it becomes like a different story. But that's part of being on a spiritual journey. I've mentioned many times, 90% of the world's population hasn't woken up and haven't even started on their spiritual journey. They're just fully enmeshed in weaving this tapestry of their life, lifetime after lifetime. They decide next lifetime, I don't like the colour of these threads, I'll pull them out and replace them with a new colour. Or shape over here, instead of rounded there, I think I'll make it a bit more triangular or something like that. So that's what we're doing in each lifetime. We're altering our tapestry, like a big mosaic. But eventually we make it so it's perfect. And then when it's all perfect, we say, none of this applies to me. But that's a long way down the tracks.
I think so.
So I'll leave it at that at this stage. All right. I'll just briefly refer to Prakriti now, nature, the creation. So to help understand these qualities a bit more, Prakriti, the entire universe, is said to consist of these three primary qualities, which combine together in different measures to form all substances at whatever level they manifest. So that's a big mouthful there, Jacqui. The entire creation has these three gunas operating in there. So even things like planets and stars and energies, magnetism, gravity, all these things, oceans, trees, the plant, mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, animal kingdom, the birds and the fish of the oceans, all this sort of stuff, human beings, everything in the creation has these three gunas constantly playing out. And basically the three of them, and I'll elaborate a bit further, but Sattva is the purity. It's the consciousness behind everything. Rajas is the movement. So the earth moving around the sun, the moon moving around earth, everything's moving. Wind moving trees, branches, animals running, fish swimming. But for human beings, a lot of the movement that we're going to be talking about and a lot of the indolence, like Tamas, is the physical substance of everything. So our bodies are tamasic. The moon, the sun, the ocean, everything that you can see has got that tamasic aspect. All the gunas also, I might add here, Jacqui, I'll mention them later, but they all have positive and negative aspects. So one's not all good and the next one's half good and half bad and the bottom one's all bad. Everyone's got, so the tamasic aspect in us, the physical, is our body and all the organs in it and so on. The movement, rajas, is our mind, me speaking, you listening, ears and tongue working, our minds working, thinking, our hearts are beating, digestive systems working. So there's action taking place all through the creation in every being, and this consciousness is behind it all. And Tamas is the third one. And with the physicality of it, that's the densest vibration or the densest of the gunas. And so there's laziness there and slothfulness and I couldn't care less and that operating in human beings. So we can describe human beings as predominantly sattvic, rajasic or tamasic. Everyone's got all three, but there'll be one that's predominant in a person. And that'll all unfold as we go along. All right. Mm-hmm. So I was just describing there that the big picture that these three gunas, stressing again how important they are, operate all through the creation, but most of the creation operates according to what's called God's plan or the divine plan. So the sun always shines, the planets move around, tides come and go. No one says, oh, the sun doesn't say I'm not going to shine anymore, or the tides are going to say I'm going on 2 weeks holiday, I'm not going to move all the oceans and things like that. So everything there is doing, most things in the creation are just doing what they're meant there to do. It's only human beings that have got the free will, a very important ingredient that a human being's got. That means we can manipulate these three gunas in whichever way we want to. So they're pretty powerful, Jacqui.
And boy, gee, how do we as humanity manipulate
Yeah,
away?
yeah,
My goodness.
yeah. One sentence and you're starting to get the hang of it pretty well. That's exactly right. So I'll continue on. So these qualities are also referred to, just so we can understand the word qualities in a broader sense, as our moods, forces, energies, tendencies, traits, states. So why do some people want to do this and other people don't want to do this? Why do some people say these things and other people don't say these? You know, sometimes we say, oh, I got, first thing we say in the morning to our partner or something, oh, I think I've got out of the wrong side of bed. Already the person knows as soon as they're woken up that they've had a restless sleep or may have been a hangover from last night, or, you know, some worries have been there and they instantly come to mind, and you're already sort of feeling you're not in a good mood. Well, that's the qualities, that's the gunas playing out. Other days you spring out of bed and you start whistling or humming a tune and dancing around on tippy-tip toes. A different guna, different energy, different mood. Any of these words are all reflective and meaning the same thing. They're the qualities of these gunas. And so these energies, qualities, tendencies, moods, forces bring the creation into existence. They sustain it during its existence, and of course they bring it to an end when it finishes, which we looked at in detail in the last chapter. But they also bind all human beings in it through their desires and attachments. So there's a clear statement, Jacqui, to, you know, in answer to the point you were making before. The three gunas all bind all human beings into this tapestry area. And while you're still anyone thinking that that's what the purpose of life is and that's what I want to be doing, well, you'll keep doing it. And as I keep saying, there's no problem with that. It's a long creation and people can have millions of embodiments to keep weaving and adding and changing their tapestry. But eventually it's built into the being a mechanism that says enough's enough, I'm done with tapestries and I want to move on. All right. And so one will eventually need to understand and accept the truth of these three gunas, the meaning and teaching behind them, and have them as a higher priority than what they might have at the moment. And most people just don't have it as any sort of priority because they don't really know anything about it. Everyone knows that they've got moods. I'm in a good mood, I'm in a bad mood. That's don't have to be Einstein to work that out. And everyone knows that I'm feeling like vegging out now, yeah. And everyone knows when you've rolled your sleeves up and you're getting into it, work or whatever it might be. So we all understand those, but we don't understand the significance and that aspect of how they keep us in bondage. All right, Jacqui? It's a desire-driven, egoic, almost what do you call it? Like a reflection, not reflection, reflex, a reflex action. You just sort of, your mind says, say this, your body wants to do that. What we're looking at in this teaching is a more measured approach and a more knowledgeable approach and a more truthful approach. With the other one, our life's a hit and miss. Sometimes your mood's good and sometimes it's not good and it's not good. So that's that hit and miss. So that's the two parts of our nature, calm and placid at some stage, but wild and furious at others. Well, eventually, why would you say I want to keep the wild and furious side of me? You
I've
want
got
to
a
bring.
I've got a big question here, which personally I'm wondering, and I'm also wondering if our listeners are wondering, but I'm also curious, thinking I could be premature, but maybe I'll launch it anyway, and you can come back to it if now's not the right time, given what you're about to explain next. But I think even at that basic level of understanding, tamasic is sort of more the lazy, the slothfulness, the tired, the need to rest, all of those sort of qualities. The rajasic is the movement and overactivity and just the constant go, 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 go. I think it's
Yes.
quite easy, even at that basic concept, for almost everybody to understand that they're kind of necessary here and there, and we all know that we're associated with them here and there, but people could understand that they're the ones that probably trap us most, and see that there's a lot of issues with
Yeah,
those ones.
yeah, that's correct. That's true.
And the question I have now about Sattva, the beauty, the peace, the stillness, obviously that's well, maybe not obviously. To me, it feels like a higher quality. Like, it's certainly what most of us who are living consciously are trying to bring more of into our everyday lives. But I'm aware that in what you've just alluded to, and also in some of the teachings I've come across, that too is a trap. We're not supposed to be always seeking that. So that is the question in essence. Can you explain more about why that is a trap, when it seemingly has so many good qualities that as human beings we should all be aspiring to? And maybe
Yeah,
it's just a segue or a pathway that from that we then move to something else. But
yeah,
I suspect you were going there anyway. So
yeah.
if we're not quite there, keep going with your teaching till we arrive at that point. But it just feels a useful one to articulate, because I
Yeah, yeah.
suspect people are thinking it as we're talking in this
Oh,
manner.
I'm certain they are, Jackie. I'm certain they are. As I say, 30 years teaching groups and that over those 30 years, and myself, I'll just share quickly with you that what drew me to my first session at the School of Philosophy up in Melbourne was when I saw an advertisement, and it outlined, it said a 12-week course for people who want to extend their ideas of who they are and things like that. So the advertisement caught my attention, and I looked down the 12 weeks, and it just sort of talked. Love was the topic for 1 week, and um, I can't think of others, but desires, I think, sort of the topics we've been covering. But in the middle there somewhere was the three universal energies. And I thought to myself, instantly it just jumped out at me. I knew about gravity and space and magnetism and stuff like that, um, and I knew about being lazy or using energy but the way it was worded, three universal energies, it sort of it gave me a feeling of a big picture that it'd be looking at. And boy, oh boy, when I got there to that week, and it's introduced the word guna and rajas and sattva and tamas, words that of course I hadn't ever heard of, and hardly anyone in the Western world has heard of these words. And even in the Eastern world, like in India and those sorts of places where some of this knowledge is understood, most people still don't understand fully the depth and the quality of these three gunas. Um, and you're right. I won't elaborate too much on the question you asked. The first, your comments about tamas and rajas were clear, and I don't think anyone listening's got any problem with that. It's sattva that is the a difficult aspect for people on their spiritual journey. But I'll elaborate later. But even sattva still binds a person through their attachment to the sattvic qualities. If that, that's as brief as I'll leave it at this stage. So any attachment to anything in this creation, good, the bad, or the ugly, is an attachment. Okay, and you won't be able to escape this tapestry while you're just thinking, oh, I've got all the nice bits in there and I've left out all the bad bits. Everything in the end, Jackie, has to go. All right, so I'll
Well, enough to
continue.
whet our appetite and keep our
Yes,
interest
yeah,
piqued until we return to this.
yeah, yeah. And it'll probably still be difficult to comprehend for many people when I finish the chapter next podcast. But at least I'll have, run all the material that Krishna's teaching Arjuna in this, and then everyone's got to deal with that all this knowledge the best they can. For some, it'll be pretty clear, and they'll want to go further into that, on their spiritual journey. For others, they'll just say, "Oh, it sounds a nice sort of concept. I don't really disagree with it, but I'm still haven't finished putting these threads in here and these threads over here." So again, no crime, no problem, just where everyone is. When I finish these podcasts, Jacqui, all 40 of them, everyone's not going to be just racing ahead to self-realization or enlightenment. Everyone will just continue on, but hopefully most will make some sort of adjustments or changes along the way. One or two might fall deeply in love with every word I'm saying, hanging off every word and putting it all into practice. And so you're good people. You keep that up. All right, Jacqui, everything's good. Everyone's doing what they're doing, and that's the way it's got to be. Just keep doing what you're doing. Everyone will quicken their pace when they're ready to. Everyone will move at the pace they're going. I can't do anything about it. You can't do anything about it. That's just the way the creation pans out.
And I think it's aspirational enough for most people, well, not even aspirational, just feels essential enough just to be living life with all the demands that get thrown at people with work and family and commitments and time constraints and pressures and stresses and all of these things. It's enough just to cope and adjust and be trying to be your very best version of yourself, growing where you can, contemplating where time permits. I mean, sometimes that alone just feels like enough challenge. So I think for the majority that are possibly in that scenario, just keep going in whatever small ways you can. It's all we can do.
That's all we can do, and that's all we're meant to do, and there's no other way about it. But this teaching, Jacqui, the teachings of the Gita is all embracing. It spells out to every individual from start to middle to finish what their journey's about and what they need to do. And how they go about it, how long it takes them, is up to each individual. But I can't sort of, if I'm doing a summary of the Gita, say, not too many people are going to be interested in how to escape the 3 Gunas or something. So I won't do, the chapter on the Gunas. I'm obliged as a teacher in this sort of field to present the material as thoroughly and as accurately as I can. So not up to me to say, this is going to be too hard for some people or this or that. We've got a range of listeners, and for some, the whole concept of these 3 Gunas will be mind-boggling. Others have already got some pretty good ideas, even if they don't know the words, but just from what we're discussing. And for a rare few, it'll be an inspiration to continue on. All right, so I'll continue on, Jacqui. Throughout Krishna's teaching so far, we've been learning that happiness and effectiveness in life depends upon our capacity to master the mind, and that the most powerful weapon in the battle to win the mind is knowledge. So all through those first 6 chapters, we were talking about a lot of that, and even in the last 6. Even the knowledge of love and devotion has to be understood and applied. So here in this chapter on the Gunas, or mental attitudes, he provides us with a new capacity to detect, for detecting the most powerful tendencies that rise up to rule our mental and emotional life at any given moment. So there's a very powerful statement there, Jacqui. That understanding these 3 Gunas, they mainly operate in our mental and emotional attitudes and habits and thinking and living and behaving. That's where the fundamental changes need to take place for every individual. And it's hard to make changes if you haven't got the right knowledge. And knowing a bit more about these Gunas gives you a greater chance to win this battle of the mind. The battle, remember everyone, Jacqui, and everyone, is between ego controlling your mind and buddhi controlling your mind. Yeah, it's a constant battle. So I'll continue on. So with this new knowledge of the gunas, we're now gaining their causes and antidotes. We are well equipped to master the mind's behavior and habits, and also to understand more clearly how every human being on the planet is being ruled by their constantly changing gunas. Very important last line. 8 billion people on the planet, Jacqui, and you wonder sometimes, why is that person doing that? Why is that person saying that? You know, you just said at the start of this, why do I sometimes, I've just said something and I wish I hadn't said it or done it. Well, it's because in those moments, ego has got the better of you and made you say or do or think whatever it is. So it's a constant battle, and all this knowledge, as we're getting more and more understanding of how to perform right actions, the need to still the senses, have a calmer mind, you know, all of this, these sattvic qualities are all so important. But the beauty of it is that when you see a situation unfolding in your family, you know, between husbands and wives, or mums and children, or dads and children, or whatever, at work, between one work colleague and another, between the boss and a work colleague, in a football team, in society. Why is everyone doing it? Well, everyone's doing it according to their gunas. They're ruling their emotions and their whatever. So people who fall into the victim mode, for example, all their lives they're going to be a victim. And then there's people who fall into rescue ranger mode. Well, there's a victim. I'll go and rescue them from their victimhood. Everyone's got to learn what's going on, why it's all happening. Sometimes you help a person. Other times it's best to leave them alone and cry and suffer a bit to learn from the crying and the suffering. Might seem harsh. It's a very unpleasant concept in the Western world, but it's the old saying, like in the gym even, no pain, no gain. Well, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So we can start understanding what we understand. Firstly, more clearly how these 3 gunas are operating within us, and that we can change them once we recognise that, and also how they're operating in every other person that we come in contact with or that we see. Why are all these wars on? Why is there so many people taking drugs? Why is there so much this, so much that? All of it's due to the gunas operating, and usually in a undesirable manner, not conducive to the person's happiness and well-being, and then obviously to society's happiness and well-being. I better continue on, Jacqui.
You had better.
Times.
Time is ticking. Synthesize whatever you've got left on that page.
Yeah.
Don't tell me pages.
Yeah, it's the other 2 that I'm worried about. I finished with that one.
Succinct.
Yeah, I'll finish off on this page because this is where a lot of the nitty-gritty comes into it. So Krishna now continues to explain to Arjuna in greater detail the qualities of the 3 gunas and how they bind all beings. He says, like a spider spins its web from within itself, I likewise emanate from within me these qualities in my creation. And he says, and I do that through the vibrationary sound of Om. So this gives people an idea. You know, everyone likes chanting Om and hearing music that's got Om, 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 all beautiful, yes. But that's actually the sound of the creation. And that in English, it's represented symbolically as OOM. In Sanskrit, it's AUM. A stands for Sattva, U for Rajas, M for matter, the physicality of its substance. So through that sound Om, which is up until then, there's no sound and there's no vibration, there's just consciousness. It starts a process of bringing these 3 gunas into practice, like the spider spinning a web out of itself. So the first guna that comes out is the light of consciousness, that's Sattva, light. The next one is Rajas, the movement of everything in the creation, and then Tamas, the physicality of everything in the creation. In the Christian teaching, there's the saying, first there was the Word, and the Word was God. So Word and Om, in the two teachings, Christian and Hindu, are meaning the same thing. And on a lower level, physicists and scientists refer to it as the Big Bang. They say there was some enormous explosion that took place, and from that, bits flew off everywhere and created all the galaxies and universes and fish and planet and Earth and all the rest of it, which is such a basic and crazy notion. It's incredible. But when you don't know any higher than that, well, that's what you're left with, just looking at things in the physical sense. But in defence of many physicists and scientists, it's my observation, Jacqui, that some of them they got to the Big Bang and then realised, well, there's something else. You can't just have two rocks colliding in space. You'd ask, where does the space come from? Where do those two rocks come from? So they keep probing, to their credit, and some of them are starting to research and understand some of this teaching and get an idea and realising that it all comes from a higher source, a greater source than just humans. All right. So he elaborates now. He says, so that's talking about the sound on. And he says, and I've mentioned that Sattwa's the consciousness behind everything. Rajas is the movement of everything in the creation, and Tamas is the matter or substance. And so Krishna then continues saying, Arjuna, I will now explain in more detail how these three gunas function within each individual's life, limiting and binding them all to Maya by their ego. So now he's zeroing in on individual lives, Jacqui, that we've been talking a lot about today. He says, firstly, Sattva, the finest of them, is represented in a human being as purity, light, stainless, balance, goodness, calmness, harmony, etc. You mentioned harmony before when you're saying, in a state of harmony. So these are all the qualities of a sattvic operating from a person when they're operating at their sattvic level. Every human being's capable of doing it, but they don't. Most operate from Rajas and Tamas because that's what they choose. So he says they're free from the dualities of pleasure and pain and sorrow. So that's part of the question you were putting to me, Jacqui, that even in Sattva, or to get to Sattva, you've got to rise above those dualities that are part of the tapestries of pain and sorrow and just the fact they're dualities. Yeah. Anything that's to do with dualities is not real. Rajas has the qualities of passion, action. It's restless activity, energy, anger, greed, hatred, jealousy, impatience, like the wolf story that you shared with listeners very early in our podcasts. The thirst for desires, etc. Also motivation, the will to act, to achieve, accomplish. So all the people who, like you and Dean and myself, we strive a lot. Our children striving, jobs, and we want successful marriages. We want to be successful in the world as best as we can. So it's the motivating force that drives a human being. And that's where most people on the planet operate from, the guna of Rajas. They're in that group of what we call the doers and the goers. Yeah, they're the ones that say, oh, the one below in Tamas, they talk about it. Oh, I'm going to get around to doing it one day. Yeah, procrastinate. But they never do. Whereas the Rajasic people have got movement driving them. And then Tamas, the third of the qualities, has is labelled basically as inertia. So Sattva is the bright light, the light of consciousness. Rajas is action, and Tamas is inertia, which veils the mind in ignorance of reality. It bewilders people. It leads them to darkness and delusion. Lazy, slothful, reckless and heedless, insensitive, procrastinate, little energy, couldn't care less, could even slide back on their evolutionary journey. there's a danger for some of these people that they'll slide back on their, and stop progressing. You can slide back off the other way and slide off into oblivion. So even the Tamasic people need to be mindful that they need to keep moving on. All right.
Very good.
So I'll add the little bit that I haven't got time to do today into next week's material.
Sure.
But I'll just give the exercise, Jacqui, for the listeners, and then you can have the final few words if you like. So the exercise for this week, listeners, is I know it's only been brief, but the exercise next week will elaborate a bit more on this one. But what we've already covered in this podcast, the reference to the three gunas, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, I'd like everyone to, as best they can, during the course of the week, when you're talking to someone else, or you start off with yourself always, and then anyone you come in contact with, or anything in the creation, see if you can put the label on it now as to whether it's Sattvic, Rajasic, or Tamasic. All right? Might be a bit hazy for people, but see if there's like no movement. So that'll be Tamasic. If there's a lot of movement in that'll be Rajasic. A person that you recognise, geez, they're handling this, they're not getting overexcited, or that'll be Sattvic. If you're feeling in the state, when you meditate, it'll always be a pretty Sattvic state. But observe in meditation if there's movement in the mind, thoughts. So then Rajas has crept into your Sattvic meditation. All right, Jacqui, listeners. So
Yeah.
give it your best shot, and next week one will be a little bit more explicit, and you'll have another sort of hour session on it next week.
Sounds
So,
good. No final word required from me. I think that's a straightforward exercise. I think people can grasp that, and it'll be good to pay close attention to what's going on around us and within us.
Yeah.
So
I don't
lovely.
want to.
Well, thank you.
I'll just finish off by saying I don't want to frighten any listeners. It's all good. The three gunas are there for a reason. You can't avoid them. It's just you'll realise by the end of next week, I'm sure, with more clarity, how important it is to understand that they're there and that we can control them. I'll be specifying that control aspect more fully next week. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well,
All
thank
right,
you,
Jacqui.
Michael.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody. Lovely to tune in and connect with you all, and we will see you again soon. Bye for now.
Bye.